Hey there, it's Zachary, and today we're going to look at what I think the best Generation 1 sprites for Pokémon Red and Blue are. This year, the Pokémon Company celebrated 20 years by re-releasing Pokémon Red and Blue and the Nintendo 3DS's eShop. This has some players going to Kanto region for the first time since its release, and some of the younger fans may be visiting the region for the first time. Today, I'm going to tell you what I think the best sprites for these games are. These sprites are what I'm comparing to the Pokemon that are depicted in later cartoons, games, and other media. These are my opinions. You can agree or disagree, and I wouldn't mind discussing that in the comments. I would also like to state that I'm looking at the sprites for the English Red and Blue and not the Japanese Red and Green, because most of these sprites were redesigned between Red and Green's release in 1996 and Red and Blue's release 2 years later. I'm not putting them in any particular order. I'm also not using yellow version sprites because those were made with the cartoon in mind. So let's get started. So this one's Alakazam, and it's not a little fair because they had to change the sprite either way between green and red and blue. So either way, Alakazam's sprite looks good for Generation 1. He hasn't changed much since, whether you're looking at his appearance in later games, trading cards, or the cartoon show. This has helped him become a favorite in the game in Generation 1, as well as him being one of the strongest Pokemon in the first generation of games. So next up, we have Hitmonlee. And Hitmonlee's design is pretty simple when it comes to sprites, so it was an easy job to make his sprite look good for the first generation. But when you look at his punching counterpart, Hitmonchan, you can see that Hitmonlee had a better looking sprite out of the two. And for me, that's where I chose the winner. These Pokemon looked really cool in the beginning, and looking cool was a big factor in Red and Blue, counting on the fact that you could only have one of these two Pokemon without trading with a friend. So when it comes in that case, I'll pick Hitmonlee any day. So next up, I put Weezing. And when you look at Weezing's Red and Blue sprites, you get the idea that Pokemon with easy designs had better looking sprites at the beginning. So this Pokemon had a solid sprite right off the start, and there's really not much you can say about Weezing. You do have to give Weezing some credit though, looking at his pre-evolution coughing, having an error in the sprite for his Red and Blue versions. So next up, I have Nidoking. So Nidoking and Nidoking were the only Pokemon in Generation 1 to have genders. Not to mention, you needed a Moonstone to get these Pokemon fully evolved, so some users had to pick over one another. Even though Nidoking was a popular choice in the games, between the two, when it comes down to sprites, I have to give this battle to Nidoking for just being a cleaner, better looking sprite. Now, before I mention the last one, I wanted to list a few that could have made the list, but I found their designs to be just way too simple to list because it would be very difficult to mess these sprites up, and I'm glad they didn't. These ones are Voltorb, Electrode, Ditto, and Onix. They're simple, clean-cut sprites, but they look good, and that's what really matters. Now, the one I picked last is the one I think is one of the cleanest Generation 1 sprites in the game, and that would be Meowth. The reason why I picked Meowth is because when I first started replaying the games on my Nintendo 3DS, Meowth was the first sprite that I noticed and went, wow, that's pretty good looking for Generation 1. And it gets my attention because when I look at the sprite in Generation 1 and the Red and Blue games, I think of the old Meowth trading card game from the Jungle set, and they're very alike image-wise, and Meowth is a very well-known character, so for him to go with very little changes throughout the series is pretty impressive to me. So what do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? What's your favorite Generation 1 sprite? What's your favorite Generation 1 Pokemon? Do those two match? Let me know in the comments. Other than that, thanks for watching, and that's all for now.